What would you do today if fear disappeared? What decisions would you make if failure no longer scared you? Most people never rise, not because they're weak, but because they believe they have something to lose. But you're different. You're about to realize the most dangerous, unstoppable version of yourself. The version who understands this truth: you have nothing to lose. Listen carefully. You spend your life holding back, worried about opinions, scared of mistakes, terrified of judgment. But here's the reality everyone ignores. You arrived in this world with nothing. You will leave this world with nothing. Everything in between is yours to fight for. When you understand this, you stop playing safe. You stop shrinking. You stop waiting for the right moment because you finally see the truth. There is no loss in trying, only loss in never trying. Every step you take, every risk you embrace, every challenge you confront builds you, strengthens you, sharpens you. The people who win are not the ones born lucky. They're the ones who decided they wouldn't die with regret. You weren't built for comfort. You weren't made for a boring, predictable existence. You were designed to conquer, to grow, to create, to evolve. But that starts with one mindset. You must be willing to step into the unknown, because nothing changes until you change. Nothing improves until you move. Nothing great happens in the life of someone who refuses to risk. Today, make a decision. Stop living like you have everything to protect. Start living like you have greatness to unlock. Start building the life you actually want, not the life others expect. Remember this: you can lose money, you can lose comfort, you can lose approval, but you cannot lose the person you become when you choose courage over fear. You have one life, one chance, one moment you're breathing. The next, it's over. So what are you doing holding back? Go, start, build, fail, rise again, repeat until you become unstoppable. You have nothing to lose, but everything to gain. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. People misunderstand discipline. They think it's a prison, a restriction, a limitation. They imagine discipline as chains that hold you back from enjoying life. But the truth is the opposite. Discipline is not what traps you. Lack of discipline is what traps you. Without discipline, you wake up every day controlled by cravings, impulses, comfort, doubt, and laziness. You become a puppet whose strings are pulled by whatever emotion happens to be strongest in the moment. And when emotions rule you, your life goes nowhere. Think about what happens when you live without discipline. You don't wake up when you should. You wake up when you feel like it. You don't work when you should. You work when you feel motivated. You don't pursue goals with consistency. You only pursue them when the mood hits you. But moods are unstable. Motivation is temporary. Feelings change every hour, every minute. A person who depends on motivation is a person who drifts through life with no control, no structure, and no long-term success. That is not freedom. That is chaos disguised as comfort. Discipline is what gives you the power to act regardless of how you feel. That is real power. Doing what needs to be done, even when every part of you is screaming to do the opposite. Discipline is standing up when comfort tells you to stay down. It is choosing progress over pleasure. It is choosing growth over ease. It is choosing the future over the moment. That is the difference between someone who succeeds and someone who stays stuck. Successful people are not more talented, not more gifted, not born special. They simply refuse to be controlled by emotion. They refuse to bow down to laziness. They refuse to let comfort dictate the direction of their life. They choose discipline. When you develop discipline, you start building a life that becomes unstoppable. You wake up at the time you said you would, not the time that feels good. You complete the work you planned, not the work that feels convenient. You train your mind and body every day, not just on days when energy is high. Suddenly, your feelings stop being the boss. You become the boss, and freedom begins. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want. That's wrong. True freedom is having the power to tell yourself what to do, and then obeying it. It's the ability to command yourself like a leader commanding a soldier. When you say go, you go. When you say work, you work. When you say stop, you stop. That internal authority is what builds an extraordinary life. Without discipline, you can't command yourself. You negotiate, you postpone, you self-soothe, you make excuses. And excuses feel good in the moment, but they destroy your future. Look at anyone who has achieved mastery in anything: fitness, business, mindset. skill, art. Behind every achievement is not a magical gift or lucky break. It's discipline, day after day, year after year, showing up when it's boring, pushing when it's hard, continuing when others quit. Discipline is what transforms average into exceptional. It is the hidden force behind every great success story. And here is the part most people don't want to hear. Discipline is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. Growth is uncomfortable. Progress is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. But discomfort is temporary. The results last forever. When you push through discomfort enough times, something incredible happens. Your mind rewires. You stop seeking the easy route. You stop running from challenge. You stop needing comfort to function. You start craving discipline because you understand its value. What once felt heavy becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes routine. That is the gift discipline gives you. And the freedom it creates. That is the real reward. Discipline gives you the freedom to build the body you want. The freedom to create the income you want. The freedom to develop the skills you want. The freedom to design a life that actually excites you. When you control yourself, you control your destiny. But if you don't control yourself, everything else in life will control you, your weaknesses, your habits, your distractions, your environment, even other people. You cannot live an extraordinary life while being controlled by temporary emotions. You cannot reach greatness while obeying your laziness. You cannot change your life while being owned by comfort. Emotional slavery is subtle. It feels soft, warm, easy, but it steals everything from you: potential, discipline, confidence, opportunities, self-respect. Discipline, on the other hand, demands effort, but it pays you back with power. It gives you pride. It gives you control. It gives you momentum. It gives you a future. Freedom is not handed to you. It is earned through consistent self-discipline. The more disciplined you become, the freer you become. And the day you finally understand, that is the day everything changes. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. People underestimate how much power emotions have over their lives. Most people wake up every day and immediately hand over control to whatever feeling hits them first. If they feel tired, they stay in bed. If they feel anxious, they avoid challenges. If they feel unmotivated, they delay every important task. They think they're making choices, but they're not. Their emotions are making choices for them. And a life controlled by emotions is a life trapped in a cycle of inconsistency, regret, and unrealized potential. Emotions are unpredictable. They fluctuate constantly based on weather, sleep, opinions, failures, habits, and even random thoughts. If your life is built on emotional impulses, then your results will also be unstable. One day you're productive, the next day you collapse. One week you're chasing your goals, the next you give up. One month you feel unstoppable, the next you feel lost. That's not freedom. That's imprisonment. You become reactive instead of proactive. You live in survival mode instead of growth mode. You drift through life waiting for the right feeling, but the right feeling rarely comes. Discipline is the force that interrupts this cycle. It gives you structure when your emotions try to create chaos. It gives you consistency when your motivation disappears. It gives you progress when your mind feels overwhelmed. Discipline doesn't care about your mood, your fears, or your doubts. It only cares about your commitment to action. And when you learn to follow discipline over emotion, you unlock a level of power most people never experience. With discipline, you wake up because it's necessary, not because it's comfortable. You work because it's essential, not because you're inspired. You push forward because you promised yourself you would, not because the day feels easy. That is true strength, the ability to act independently of your emotional state. Emotions whisper excuses. Discipline demands action. And action, repeated consistently, is what builds an extraordinary life. The paradox is that discipline feels restrictive at first. It feels like rules, demands, and pressure. But as you continue to practice it, something transforms inside you. What once felt like pressure becomes clarity. What once felt like force becomes habit. What once felt heavy becomes empowering. You begin to realize that discipline isn't about limiting your life, it's about designing your life. It's the tool that helps you become who you want to be instead of who your emotions try to turn you into. Think about physical fitness. Without discipline, you eat what you crave, not what you need. You train only when you feel like it, which is rarely. You promise yourself you'll start tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next month, then next year. Emotion-driven living leads to decline. Decline in health, decline in confidence, decline in energy. Discipline is what changes that. Discipline makes you show up to train whether you're tired or energized. It makes you choose nutrition over impulse. Over time, discipline creates strength, confidence, and control. The very things you thought you'd get by following your emotions. Now think about financial success. Without discipline, you spend impulsively, waste time, avoid difficult decisions, and stay trapped in the same patterns. You procrastinate on opportunities because fear whispers louder than logic. Discipline, however, helps you save, invest, learn, and grow. It builds habits that compound over time, habits that eventually give you financial freedom. Emotion wants instant pleasure. Discipline creates long-term rewards. This applies to every area of life: relationships, career, health, goals, mindset. Discipline is the stabilizing force that keeps you moving forward even when life becomes uncertain. It becomes your anchor in difficult times and your engine in good times. Emotions change with the wind. Discipline endures. The most dangerous thing about emotional slavery is that it feels comfortable. It feels easy. It feels safe. Comfort convinces you that discipline is too hard, too rigid, too demanding. But comfort will suffocate your potential. Comfort will give you a life that looks peaceful on the surface, but is filled with silent frustration underneath. When you rely on emotion over discipline, every dream you have remains distant. You talk about goals instead of achieving them. You imagine the life you want instead of building it. You live as a spectator instead of a creator. Discipline, however, is the path to freedom. Freedom from procrastination, freedom from excuses, freedom from regret. Freedom from the emotional storms that sabotage your progress. The stronger your discipline becomes, the less power negativity has over you. You start to choose what benefits you instead of what feels good in the moment. You stop running from challenges and start facing them head on. You replace doubt with action, hesitation with consistency, fear with courage. And the freedom that comes with discipline is priceless. You gain the freedom to control your habits, your mind, your results, and your future. You no longer depend on motivation or mood swings. You no longer wait for the right time. You no longer let fear control your decisions. Your life becomes intentional. Your growth becomes consistent. Your goals become achievable. You become someone who doesn't just survive emotions, you master them. Discipline is not punishment, it's power. It's the tool that allows you to rise above your impulses and shape your destiny. Without it, emotions will own you. With it, you become the owner of your life. And once you experience the strength that comes from discipline, you'll never again allow temporary emotions to dictate the direction of your future. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. Every person on this planet has dreams, ambition, desires, and a vision of a better life. But the brutal truth is this: without discipline, none of it matters. Without discipline, you live in a constant battle between who you are and who you want to become. And emotions win that battle every single time. Emotions will pull you toward comfort, fear, doubt, and hesitation. Discipline, on the other hand, pulls you toward strength, purpose, progress, and freedom. The question is simple: which force leads your life? Most people allow emotions to run their entire existence. They wake up and immediately check how they feel. Do I feel tired? Do I feel motivated? Do I feel ready? They let feelings dictate whether they work or rest, whether they push forward or give up. But feelings don't care about your future. Feelings don't care about your goals. Feelings don't care about the life you want to build. Feelings care only about one thing: comfort in the moment. And comfort, when chosen repeatedly, is the biggest enemy of growth. Discipline is the only counterforce capable of overriding emotions. It gives you the ability to act with intention instead of instinct. It allows you to follow commitment instead of convenience. It aligns your daily actions with your long-term vision rather than your short-term comfort. Discipline is not about being strict for the sake of strictness. It's about building a life where you are in control, not your impulses. It's about giving yourself the structure required to break free from the chains of emotional weakness. Imagine a life with no discipline. You skip workouts because you don't feel like it. You waste hours scrolling because it feels good. You avoid opportunities because they feel scary. You procrastinate because your emotions convince you that discomfort is dangerous. And slowly, your dreams start slipping further away. Not because you're incapable, not because you're unlucky, but because you've become emotionally obedient. You follow every emotional impulse like a servant following a master. That is not freedom. That is self-imprisonment. Now imagine a life built on discipline. You wake up at the time you said you would, not because it feels easy, but because you decided it. You work toward your goals daily, not because the day feels inspiring, but because consistency matters more than emotion. You push yourself physically, mentally, and professionally because discipline reminds you that excellence is earned, not wished for. Over time, the results begin to show. Your body changes, your confidence rises, your income grows, your mindset strengthens. And the most powerful shift of all happens internally. You stop being controlled by your feelings. You start controlling them. Most people think discipline is hard. And they're right. It is hard. It's uncomfortable, demanding, repetitive, and often lonely. But the price of discipline is nothing compared to the price of regret. Regret is a burden you carry for life. Regret whispers, you could have done more. You could have become more. You chose comfort over purpose. Discipline may cost you comfort in the moment, but it rewards you with pride, achievement, and growth. Regret costs you everything. Freedom is one of the greatest illusions people misunderstand. They think freedom means doing whatever they want, whenever they want. But that kind of freedom leads to chaos, addiction, instability, and weakness. Real freedom is much deeper. Real freedom is the power to command yourself. The ability to make decisions that lead to long-term success rather than short-term pleasure. Real freedom is waking up each day knowing you have control over your habits, actions, mindset, and direction in life. Discipline is the mechanism that builds that freedom. When you discipline your mind, you are no longer enslaved by doubt or fear. When you discipline your body, you gain energy, strength, and confidence that emotions cannot take from you. When you discipline your habits, you create a life that operates with momentum instead of stagnation. When you discipline your goals, you start living intentionally instead of drifting aimlessly. Emotions will always exist. Fear, laziness, procrastination, doubt, they never disappear. But discipline reduces their influence. With discipline, you feel fear but take action anyway. You feel tired but follow through. You feel uncertainty but move forward regardless. That's real strength, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to act beyond emotion. Think about the person you want to become 5 years from now. Strong, confident, successful, respected, fulfilled. That version of you does not come from luck. It does not come from motivation. It does not come from temporary excitement. It comes from disciplined action repeated daily, even on the days when the last thing you want to do is push forward. Without discipline, your emotions will rule you. They will manipulate you, weaken you, distract you, and eventually destroy the potential you carry. But with discipline, you rule yourself. You rise above the pull of comfort. You build habits that shape your future. You create momentum that emotions cannot stop. And that is the highest form of freedom a human can experience. Discipline doesn't restrict your life. It unlocks it. The more disciplined you become, the more freedom you earn. Freedom to grow. Freedom to improve. Freedom to choose your direction. Freedom to build a life you're proud of. Freedom from the emotional chains that hold most people back forever. In the end, it's simple. You either control your emotions or your emotions control you. And discipline is the only force strong enough to ensure that you are the one in charge. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. Most people don't realize how quietly emotions can take over their decision-making. It happens so subtly that you don't even notice the moment you stop being the driver of your life and start being the passenger. One bad mood and your entire day collapses. One moment of doubt and you abandon a goal you've been dreaming about for years. One wave of laziness and you postpone something that could completely change your future. This is how emotional slavery works, not through force, but through quiet surrender. Every time you choose feelings over action, you give up a little more control. Without discipline, emotions become your ruler. They decide when you'll work, when you'll rest, when you'll chase opportunities, and when you'll give up. You become reactive instead of proactive. You wait for motivation instead of creating momentum. And the worst part is, living this way feels normal. It feels natural. You tell yourself, I'll do it when I feel ready, not realizing that readiness is an illusion created by comfort. The truth is you will never feel like doing the hard things your future requires. That is why discipline exists, to carry you through when your emotions would rather see you stay the same. People often describe discipline as restrictive, as if it blocks you from enjoying life. But what's more restrictive than being controlled by fear? What's more limiting than being trapped by laziness? What's more suffocating than knowing you have potential, but never doing anything with it because your emotions keep convincing you to wait? Discipline doesn't trap you. Emotion traps you. Discipline frees you from that prison. Discipline builds consistency, and consistency builds strength. Strength builds confidence, and confidence builds freedom. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. It's about having the ability to choose what's right over what's easy. When you are disciplined, you can choose focus over distraction. You can choose persistence over quitting. You can choose growth over stagnation. Without discipline, those choices do not belong to you. They belong to your emotions. Think about the most successful people you admire. Their results are not accidents. They are not dependent on motivation. They are not powered by emotion. They rely on structure, habits, and principles. They show up regardless of how they feel. That is the difference. You can have the same dreams as them, the same abilities, sometimes even more potential. But without discipline, your emotions will drown everything you could become. Let's break it down even further. When you lack discipline, you live in reaction to life. When something feels overwhelming, you retreat. When something feels boring, you skip it. When something feels tough, you postpone it. This creates a cycle of avoidance. Every task you avoid becomes heavier. Every fear you run from grows stronger. Every opportunity you delay becomes harder to pursue. Discipline breaks this cycle by forcing you to confront resistance instead of retreating from it. On the other side of discipline is freedom. Freedom from procrastination, freedom from doubt, freedom from emotional chaos. When you are disciplined, you don't rely on emotional approval. You don't need to feel ready to take action. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You move because movement is required. You work because responsibility demands it. You grow because you have decided that your future deserves more than your excuses. Discipline also creates identity. When you repeatedly choose action over emotion, you start to view yourself differently. You stop seeing yourself as someone who procrastinates, who avoids, who hesitates. You begin to see yourself as someone capable, consistent, strong, focused. Identity fuels behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. This loop, when built with discipline, is one of the most powerful forces in human development. The reason discipline feels hard is because emotions are loud. Excuses come dressed as comfort. Fear comes disguised as logic. Laziness comes disguised as taking a break. The emotional mind is skilled at creating stories that justify inaction. Discipline doesn't negotiate with those stories. Discipline doesn't care about comfort. Discipline only cares about truth. And the truth is this: if you continue living by emotion, nothing important will ever be accomplished. Life becomes easier when you are disciplined because the big challenges shrink. The things that used to intimidate you become normal. What was once difficult becomes routine. You develop resilience, mental toughness, and a deep sense of control. With discipline, you don't collapse under pressure. You rise to meet it. You don't fear challenges. You grow from them. You don't rely on inspiration. You rely on commitment. Freedom is not the absence of structure. Freedom is the ability to build the life you want without being controlled by temporary feelings. Freedom is knowing that you can rely on yourself. Freedom is achieving the goals that once felt impossible. Freedom is waking up with direction instead of drifting through life. And all of it begins with discipline. Without it, emotions will run your life. With it, you take back your power. You step into a higher version of yourself. The version not ruled by impulses, but driven by purpose. The version who leads, not follows. The version who chooses action, not excuses. The version who builds a life worth living. Discipline is not punishment. It is the key to everything you want. And until you master it, your emotions will continue to own you. But once you do, the world opens in ways you never imagined. Discipline is the force that separates those who dream from those who achieve. Throughout this journey, you've seen how emotions try to sway you, weaken you, distract you, and hold you hostage in a life far below your potential. But the moment you choose discipline over emotion, everything changes. You stop drifting and start directing. You stop reacting and start creating. You stop running from challenges and start meeting them head on. Life becomes less about how you feel in the moment and more about who you are determined to become. And that shift, small at first, becomes the turning point that shapes your entire future. Understand this clearly: discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it is the birthplace of freedom. Without it, you are chained to your impulses, stuck in cycles of procrastination, excuses, and regret. With it, you gain the power to break those chains. You gain the ability to push forward even when fear whispers, "Stop." You gain the strength to stay focused when distractions scream for your attention. And in doing so, you start building a life that reflects your highest standards instead of your lowest moods. That is real freedom. Freedom earned, not inherited. When you choose discipline, the world opens up in ways you never imagined. Opportunities appear because your consistency has made you ready for them. Confidence grows because you know you can rely on yourself. Progress compounds because you show up day after day, regardless of how you feel. The person you become through discipline is stronger, sharper, more resilient, and more capable than the version of you that lived under emotional control. Discipline molds you, shapes you, and prepares you for greatness long before the results even show. So let this be your conclusion and your beginning. You will no longer live as a servant to emotions that change every hour. You will no longer surrender your future to fear, laziness, or doubt. You will live with intention, with structure, with purpose. You will choose action over excuses, consistency over comfort, and discipline over emotion. And through that choice, you will claim the freedom, strength, and success that were always waiting for you. Your life begins the moment you decide to take control. And that moment is now. Thank you for watching and giving your time and energy to this message. I appreciate your support more than you know. If this speech brought you value, motivation, or clarity, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss the content designed to push you toward your highest potential. Your journey matters, your discipline matters, and your future is worth fighting for. Stay committed, stay focused, and never stop leveling up. Until next time, stay strong, stay disciplined, and keep moving forward. Thank you, and goodbye.